Hello everyone! So I have a review to do for a Patreon request, however, I felt a little bit of education was required before. It's going to delve into the Euro-G1 side of the Transformers line, and while I feel like we throw that term around a lot, it's rare when you actually just sit down and see just how much product was exclusive to Europe for at least a while during the very end of Generation 1 and the very beginning of Generation 2. So that is what I'm going to look at today. Every single toy that was first released in Europe. That does mean that we are going to exclude some of the other weird European releases, such as the Classics Transformers, the original iteration, which were just reissues, and the occasional Japanese figure like Galaxy Shuttle and Overlord that ended up on European markets. No, we are going to be focusing on the ones that were brand new molds in Europe first. And when I call them Euro-G1, we are going to acknowledge that many of these were also available in Canada, Australia, even a few released in Japan. They are generally referred to as Euro-G1 still because that's where they came out first, which is interesting to me in a market today which sometimes doesn't even get all the retail releases that the rest of the world does. It's weird. But we're going to start with the ones that eventually did come out in the US during Generation 2, and we're going to start with the Accelerators, which, they were the gimmick of them being chromed weapons that formed the engine in vehicle mode. This is Hot Rider, which in the US version was Turbo Fire, with the only change being the dark windows. My boy, Rapido, he outranks you, he outranks me, he outranks everybody. Once again, the European version, translucent pink for the windshields, kind of a smoky color for the US version. As we go through this, I want you to notice just how many of the Autobots are using translucent pink, how many of the Decepticons are using translucent green, and then point out how many Decepticons are using bronze as one or usually the primary color of their head. Keep an eye for it. Alright, so this is Scram, who actually managed to keep his name and most of his colors when he was imported. And the final Accelerator, Zap, which would be the poor choice of name for this mold if it wasn't for the fact that in America his name was Windbreaker. That was well chosen. Now, on the other side of this, we have the Sky Scorchers. This is Hawk, who later came out in America as Eagle Eye. Snipe, who came out as Afterburner. Tons of stickers on that boy. Tons of little paint apps. We have Terradive, who got to keep his name, which is good. I like the name Terradive. And Windraiser, a name that would pop up in Transformers here and there. This was originally Tornado in Europe, by the way. So, again, you can already see what I mean by the colors that the Euro-G1 toys just happen to have. Even crossing the overseas, a lot of these little touches remained. So you can actually kind of pick out who originally came from Europe if you're paying enough attention to the Generation 2 toy line. Which we're going to point out, by the way, the gimmick to these, not any real gimmick. They just came with they kind of just came with extra accessories. I'm not even sure if the Sky Scorchers had a linking gimmick. Most of them do. Most Euro-G1 toys break down into kind of subsets and factions, really, based on the gimmick that they had. So you get to know a lot of them by that. We're going to get into some weird ones, though, so bear with me as we take a look at the Motivators. So this is Gripper, and then we have Lightspeed, not the Technobot, a completely different Lightspeed. And then we have Flame. And Flame is probably where bells are going off because, well, you can see what the gimmick of the Motivators were. An Energon figure would plug into the chest, you'd close the chest up, and that little Energon robot would form the face. It's the Brainmasters from Transformers Victory. They came out in Europe with completely new names, completely new color schemes, and while they physically had the ability to combine, for some reason the European release completely neglected to include their combiner components, meaning you couldn't form your weird, colorful version of Land Caesar or Road Caesar. It makes no sense to me why they excluded a few parts out of these releases, even if you're trying to cheap out. Why those? Like you do better just like you would do better just like gluing the face into the helmet and just removing the Brainmaster altogether. Like, the combining is cooler than the weapons. Skip the weapons. Just let them combine. I don't know. Weird decision. Here's the weirder one. Meet the Rescue Force, which didn't even have names. They all came on a generic card that had all 4 of them on it, and just said, well, had all 4 of their artworks, I should say, and then just one of the figures. This is the Rescue Bots Buggy, the Drill. Yes, they didn't have names. The Jet, and the weirdest one, the Tank. So yeah, it's the Lio Kaiser team. It's the Breast Force. But they do not have their Breast Masters, and they do not have 2 of their members. So there is no Lio Kaiser for you. They're redone into rescue vehicles, which explains why the tank has lost its gun barrels in exchange for these little robotic rescue arms. Which is weird because when you look at it this way, it feels like a release that let them cheap out and just like release something as simple as possible in order to just fill out a toy line. But then they went to the trouble of remolding the tank. So I'm not sure what the goal here was. All you ended up with was a bunch of robots with hollow chests. It's a weird choice. It's a really weird choice. All right, hang on. Let me get my Let me get my slideshow working again, and we're gonna move on to the exclusive Action Masters. And when I look back at these, I like stunned because like, wait, some of these were released only. Wait, you're telling me some of these weren't in America at all? And you're also gonna notice the theme. So we have Bombshell here, of course. Charger, which was completely exclusive new character over in the UK. Power Flash. You'll notice not great pictures of these exist. Sideswipe, an original 84 character, and his never came out in America. It's so weird. Now, you probably picked up on it by now. All of the partner components to these Action Masters, they are named, but they are not actual like independent robots or anything. They're all just kind of drones, and they all form heads. They all form helmets for the Action Masters, which, if you remember from my previous video about like Transformer concepts, that was the original plan for Action Masters, was for the partners to become heads. Now, it's going to be animals mostly, but this is kind of a realization of the original gimmick, even if it is just a few a couple like tanks and things like that. Here's Takeoff with this little like pteranodon thing that forms over his head. It's a bizarre it looks bizarre, right? You're also going to notice that these just do not have kind of the same polish that the original ones did. It does definitely feel like these were like, it feels like all of these were half baked, right? Like the Action Master was ready to go, the partner was not, so they kind of just went with the same theme on all of them, and it's just very, very simple engineering to get it to work. Tracks, case in point. Treads come off and form things on his back, and then the top just becomes a helmet. And again, Tracks, of all characters, did not get released in America. It's weird. Let's move on to something a little bit more interesting. The Action Master Elites, the ones that could actually transform. And transform I'm using very loosely. Double Punch, obviously done up at after Black Zarak in incredibly garish colors. Beautifully garish, I would call it. And the most famous, Omega Supreme. Hello, Vangelis. You'll notice that's not much of a transformation, but it is accomplishing one. All of them are. This is my favorite, Turbomaster, who is obviously Bruticus, given a more generic body and a very haphazard transformation that entirely depends on parts you plug onto him. but I kind of love him. Grimlockamus, where is my Combaticon Combiner repaint, Combiner Wars repaint done like this? Coward, do it. Windmill. This is another interesting one because it's so like ridiculously asymmetrical. And if you can kind of forget that it's just an arm and a leg forming half the copter mode, and imagine that it's towing this massive like laser weapon, it kind of works. It kind of looks like something. I think this actually would have been cooler and even more asymmetrical if the right arm and right leg were colored differently, so it really did look like a different component. Like, that would have been a cool illusion. But, yeah, this is the weird one out of the batch. All right, so we move on to the Exosuit Action Masters, vehicles that turned into power armor. This is Circuit, garish, but not, like, extreme. Rumbler. So, Rumble is a Decepticon. Rumbler is an Autobot. Have fun keeping that straight. His actually got to be motorized, by the way. This one actually, like, moved itself along. Slicer, my personal favorite. His was also motorized, so it could drive. And then, of course, brace your eyes for Thundercracker. The most, I think, probably the most infamous of Euro-G1 neon color schemes. And, like, that was just the signature of Euro-G1 toys. You've seen a lot of pink and bright greens in this, but, like, this is a whole different shade of vibrant. This is what mantis shrimp see with all their extra receptors. I think they see the world in colors like this all the time. All right, so let's move on to some of the more gimmick lines. These are the Aqua Speeders, which means they all used water jet weapons. This is Aqua Fend. That is the correct name, Aqua Fend. Then we have Deluge, who was renamed and repainted into Drench in America. We move on to Jetstorm. That's like a water jet, not like a jet in the air. That's why it's always confusing. And then we have Speedstream, who was renamed Deluge. So Deluge had to be renamed Drench, so Street Stream could be Deluge. It's really easy to search for these on eBay if you're trying to complete a collection, by the way. So they all had a water squirting gimmick, and we're not done with that water squirting gimmick yet either. Let's move on to Lightformers. So the gimmick here is all of them came with a scope that you peek your eye through, and you can actually see like it passed all the way through, and then you crank a dial, and it would make a slideshow appear. And the slideshow looked like lasers firing into the distance. So it looked like you were firing lasers at whatever, opposing transformer / younger sibling you were aiming this thing at. Made a nice little, like, ratchety kind of machine gun noise, too. So this is Deftwing, a toy we never saw in America, turning into a very chunky jet mode. Iron Fist, who's probably the most famous out of this line, thanks to IDW, using him heavily. But on the opposite side, we had the Tracons, which is the same gimmick but for the Decepticons. Calcar, still one of the weirdest names I've ever heard in my life. I think it's Calculator Car combined, trying to make that cool. It's not cool. And Fearswoop, a name that actually did pop up in America once again. Super bright for a Decepticon. Not going to sneak up on anybody. Let's move on to Obliterators. So these were beautiful. So these got name changes when they flipped over. So these was right on the line of the end of G1 and in the very beginning of G2. These were re-released in G2 packaging with new names. So Obliterator Clench for the Decepticons became, I want to say, Juggernaut. I remember they really pushed like a legal boundary on that name. And then we had Pyro. And offhand, I cannot remember his second name again, and that's bad of me. So the Obliterator gimmick to it was, as you can see, that a big chunk of their vehicle mode formed a base, and the base had some kind of auto-firing weapon gimmick. I really, and it doesn't work often, but Clenches is really cool. I never had Pyro, so I can't really I can't really say how his worked. Pyro also poor victim of GPS. Predators. All right. So this is just a simple missile firing and dropping gimmick. Nothing really too much to talk about. Falcon. See, Skydive, who reminds me of one of those little like Wendy's GoBot toys. Same colors. Snare. Pretty simple names we got going on here. And Talon, which Talon actually looks pretty cool. But again, translucent green, bronze faces. It was just a weird thing. It's just a weird like link between them all. Gives them like this really weird cohesion, I think. So those are the Predators. And then we move on to the larger ones. So this is Stalker, which came out as Machine Wars Soundwave over here. Yeah, super vibrant. Super vibrant. This is another perfect example of Euro-G1 just glowing, radiant neon colors. I absolutely love it. So Stalker had a gimmick where you could actually, you could see different scenes going down the barrel, of this big rocket, and depending on and you could actually connect, you connect the figures like the ones we just previously saw. You could connect those to the top, and it would actually change the scene you were looking at. Really interesting gimmick. Really weird gimmick. And the leader of the Predators, Skyquake, another one of the more famous Euro-G1 toys. And of course, over here it was Machine Wars Starscream, King Atlas. We know those. But again, I still actually really like these colors. It's an interesting shade of green. So let's move on. More water squirters. So this is the Stormtroopers. Once again, I didn't think Europe was really concerned with like trademark laws at the time. So this is Aqua Blast, really original. Drench. So this is where we got it. Drench was also a name that got borrowed from Europe, but not for the original character. Drench never made it to the U.S. Hydra Dread, which is an incredible name. I don't know why he's wielding an elephant as a weapon, but there you go. And Rage. Pure and simple, Rage. Who actually looks super cool. I actually really like Rage. All right. And then we move on to Turbomasters. This is Boss. I love Boss. So Turbomasters all had the same gimmick of their engine formed their rocket launcher. And as you can see, they kept plenty of extra rockets on them. So Boss here. We have Flash, not the DC character. Again, why? There are no lawyers in the UK in 1992. Is it really? Hurricane, which is probably the most normal looking of any G2 or Euro G1 toy we've seen so far. And then Rotor Storm, going up to a larger size scale. Once again, lots of missile firing gimmicks on all of these. Really cool. And then Scorch. And every time I look at Scorch, I keep wondering why a modern Trailbreaker hasn't been retooled into Scorch. Look at that paunch. That's so obvious. Just do it. Give me a select Scorch. I want one. I've got the Bakhan one. That's a Hound repaint. It's not the same. And then the leader of the Turbomasters, Thunderclash. And we know this one. This is, again, one of the more famous characters to come out of Euro G1. Here it was Machine Wars Optimus Prime. So a lot more people have familiarity with this figure. And I think of all of the Euro G1s, this is probably the one we're most likely to see again at some point. Fans seem to really always like Thunderclash. And that's going to take us back to the beginning. So as long as I didn't leave any out, I don't think I did, though I'm not perfect at all. That is your entire list of toys that came out in Europe first during the dark era of Transformers, where there was no new product on American shelves at all. And even in Japan, there was a year where nothing happened. Only Europe kept Transformers from disappearing completely from toy shelves. Thank you for it. So that completes our look. 55 unique toys that came out in Europe for G1 and early G2. You know, that some would trickle in elsewhere, but for the most part, they kept their exclusivity, and they're kind of interesting and fascinating that way. So feel free to take a look back at these, start seeing the design similarities, and realize that, like, there's a unique family connection thing amongst a lot of these toys that makes them really fascinating to go back and look at. I hope you learned something today, or at the very least, just caught up on some toys that you maybe not realize just how many there were. So, now that you're educated, we can get on to the real meat of it. So, I will see you soon. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.